Welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Kellor.
And we did just about the most predictable thing in Under the Sun this week, and we saw Us, because it is quote unquote like the greatest horror movie to ever be made, and is so good, and it's wonderful. Peele is revolutionary, and all those good things. And I was really excited about this movie too. So it's not like we did this just because it was supposed to be such a good thing. Like Get Out is one of both of ours top movies. Like it's a really fucking good movie. So we wanted to see Us. It wasn't just like a sense of obligation.
I mean, I would go so far as to call Get Out a masterpiece. That movie had me gripping at the seats, leaving marks on my hands and on the theater chair, and just completely enraptured from beginning to end. I laughed, I cried, I lost 10 pounds. Great movie. And so yeah, I was genuinely excited to see Us too. I saw that it had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, was again kind of being hailed as the next big thing, he's done it again, the mad genius. And if you're getting from the tone of this sort of conversation that we that we didn't quite feel that way,
are you picking up that we're hedging a little bit here?
It was good. I liked it. I didn't love it.
Yeah, don't get us wrong. If you go to see this movie, you're probably gonna have a good old time with it. I think we were both just kind of expecting another Get Out level movie, and it's not quite to that point.
I mean, and part of me, I was kind of taking stock of my own reaction while I was watching the movie, and that part of me wondered, because obviously, so Get Out, for those of you who haven't seen it, you should, because it's great. Go to the last family video in town and, slap yourself with a DVD case before renting it, you monster. But Get Out, was a thriller horror film, with a, big, heavy focus on social commentary. And so, coming into Us, that's kind of what I expected, it, not that it would have the exact same themes necessarily, but it too would be very socially conscious, but also a funny, genuinely thrilling horror movie. And it is a funny, genuinely thrilling horror movie, but I just don't know if I'm stupid and not as good at reading comprehension as I thought I was, or if Peele's just kind of kicking back and having more fun with it this time and worrying less about making a zeitgeisty kind of statement. I mean, I can totally see that happening. He won the Oscar for best screenplay and was all right, now I'm gonna go make this weird movie like this, and I'm not I got this weird fun idea, and it'll be a good time, to be a nice way to sort of unwind after all the buzz and the media frenzy around Get Out, which is fair. And to his credit, I don't think it's fair to say that again, the movie is bad in any way. I do in fact think that it is quite good and quite enjoyable. I would recommend that people go see it, but it can't help but be compared to Get Out. By that metric, it doesn't quite meet it, in my opinion, and not just because even if I guess my mind could be changed, if there was some galaxy brain social commentary going on that I just didn't put together because I'm dumb. I kind of suspect that that's not the case, just because even when there is something kind of weird and abstract, when we talked about Eraserhead, we couldn't describe exactly what the fuck was going on Eraserhead, but we could point to things that were going on, whereas here, yeah. It's not that the movie's totally brainless or anything. I just it feels, all of its weird ideas don't feel as cohesive, whereas Get Out was very tight.
I think that this movie, I've seen kind of a couple takes on this. I've seen a number of African American film critics that I follow basically say don't worry so much about the analysis of it, just enjoy it as a horror movie, which I think is an important thing to take stock of, just because, like, if there was a message to this, I do feel like Peele, as an African American director, would be looking at doing something very similar to Get Out, where he's saying like, "Hey, here's a race relation type of movie" or something like that. So I think seeing African American film critics say, "I didn't see anything in it, enjoy it as a horror movie," says a lot right there. And then even beyond that, I've done a little bit of reading into like theories that are like, "Oh, what does this mean? Like, what are they trying to say?" And I haven't been impressed by any of them. It all feels like things I'm like, yeah, I kind of got what they were going for with that, but it never really felt like it fully came together. I think for me, the movie can kind of be broken into three distinct parts of thematic evaluation, and I do want to talk a little bit about that in spoilers, but it never really feels like a full thematic, thesis.
Yeah, okay. So, because you definitely did more research than me. Like, I intentionally didn't read reviews just to kind of go in with his...
Oh, I waited until after I finished.
Got it. Well, yeah, due to, like, life circumstances, I actually just got out of this movie, so maybe I'll have, like, a brain blast moment before I go to bed and, like, jot it all down and solve the movie or whatever.
We've had more than our fair share of brain blast moments on this podcast. We're, like, halfway through, we go, oh, fuck, I get it! So,
that's
like,
true.
Here we go.
That's, so maybe we're waiting on this one. But to your point about, like... just watch it as a horror movie, like, don't worry so much about the, like, social commentary. That's part of how I felt myself sort of mitigating my reaction. And one of the things that I really appreciated and I think is healthy for Peele as a filmmaker is that, we were kind of expecting, like, the ukulele to Get Out's Banjo-Kazooie, like, basically the same sort of movie, the same sort of ideas, but in, like, different wrapping paper. And... It wasn't that, and they both have their similarities. Like, they both clearly have the marks of his style, but it feels like he's not letting himself be kind of pigeonholed into being like, because I am a black filmmaker, like, every movie I make has to be like a big important political statement. So I'm glad that he's not letting himself get pigeonholed like that, because I think that is important and healthy, and that's like, in a lot of ways, this is kind of a like home invasion sort of Twilight Zone kind of movie that just happens to star a black family and is directed and written by a black guy. And that's not, that's just completely normal. And I think that's good and important too. So yeah, I think that's good. I don't need to necessarily have the brain blast to enjoy it. It was quite an enjoyable horror movie. And I think as far as, oh shit, I had one last thing I wanted to say in non-spoiler mode. Fuck. Tim Heidecker's in it, and that made me chuckle, and my girlfriend didn't get why when I laughed at the title card and when his name showed up.
Tim Heidecker in this movie is one of the most buck-wild things in the world, because there is that subset of people who know who Tim Heidecker is, and when his name comes up on the screen, you're just like, hey, hang on. Did that actually just say Tim Heidecker, or did I just have a small stroke? Because he doesn't feel like the type of person who should be in a Peele movie. It's bizarre. He fits in really well when you see what he's doing, but he also is clearly playing Tim Heidecker.
I remember what my point, not my non-Tim Heidecker point was. It's that, so, like, I also wouldn't say, if we're talking about the development of Jordan Peele as a filmmaker, who, like, I'm still going to be keeping my eye on, like, his next movie, just because this is still very good. I want to stress that. I liked the movie. Liked it. But, so this isn't a case where, like, you had another similar sort of situation where, like, a director makes his first feature and it's a big hit. I'm thinking of District 9 in particular here. I love District 9. That was like one of my favorite movies when I first saw it, and then kept a real close eye Neil Blomkamp as a director. He made Elysium and it was shitty, and he made Chappie and it was even shittier. So like clearly District 9 was a fluke, or if it wasn't a fluke, like he just used up all his good ideas. Jordan Peele's not used up. He's not a one-hit wonder like Neil Blomkamp. And so yes, good. Very, very, very good, as we say sometimes on this podcast.
I want to, before we do get into spoilers, talk about, because, like, we've talked about, like, how you kind of walked away from the movie, and I've kind of lightly touched on my, it was fine, this stuff, you kind of talked about your thematic of it, like, I gotta talk about, like, how I felt of, like, the filmmaking, because that's the shit that I'm into, like a weirdo. No, you're right. I don't think Peele has by any means been, washed up as a director. There are still some shots that are just absolutely stunning. Like, he knows what he is doing. Everything is very deliberate. Everything is very stylish, but not in like a look at me, we're so stylish type of way, as it is just like a effectively stylish. There's an early shot that I have not gotten out of my head of the family walking down the beach, and you can see their shadows next to them. And it's a very like evocative shot, because it just makes you think about what is happening and like why this is so deliberate, and like the shadows are very distinctly outlined, and it's a really, really good shot, and I really, really like it. So like it's very well done. I think my one complaint from like a film side of things is just that like there were weird moments where I felt like I lost where characters were. And I blame a lot of that on the editing more than anything, because it felt like there was a number of just quick cuts that like the character started to walk away and then it cut, and so like you lost track of where they were going. It almost has like the same problem that Leprechaun had, where like we're missing some like transitionary shots that are just necessary to fill in the gaps in your brain. That's a weird statement, I acknowledge, but it's just kind of where I ended up with at it. And like I feel like the film knows it too, is the strangest part, because a lot of the shots where I'm like, hey, that was strange, where'd they go? It's almost always followed by somebody going, Mom's going outside. And I'm like, oh, okay, that explains the character and where they were going. If you knew I was going to have that question, why did you not just fix the shot?
Don't have an answer for that one. But
Yeah.
I want to completely echo the sentiment, particularly I wasn't able to quite put my finger on like why these moments didn't like felt a little jarring or weird. But I also want to say that for me, a lot of it was when they were in the house, like that first house that they're kind of vacationing in. I feel like the geometry of that house is never. It's not like a complicated layout or anything, but like they kind of go into the pantry and into the basement and like in and out of bedrooms and stuff, and it never feels quite clear, especially with like, as you say, kind of some of the weirder cuts.
I think it's because we never get a clear shot of the stairwell. Like, I know that's a weird statement, but I feel like a good shot of the stairs would have been really helpful to like show us where they are in relation to everything else, and like explain how they go downstairs and whatnot. And it's one of those things that sounds very minor, but I feel like it would have really kind of solidified a lot of the geometry in my head.
And I think just as a testament for like how much of a legitimate issue that this sort of is that I remember distinctly that like one character ends up running to another character, and like just from the way that the shots play out and the way that like we had cut away to other characters sort of moving around, I had thought that like we were watching like some Tarantino like parallel timelines or something. Like I thought that we were looking at a previous like moment in time from another shot of that character, like before they had run off or something. Yeah, it was like just for a minute, like it wasn't super long, but I'm like, wait, what? Or like, are we doing a weird thing? And we weren't. It just wasn't entirely clear. So,
that's not great.
yeah.
I feel like I need to watch this movie again just to kind of get a better understanding of some of this stuff. It probably won't be in theaters. I'll probably wait until it comes out on DVD or whatever. Just because like it was a good movie, but like I don't feel a strong need to go back to theaters and see it again. So
No, but and you know what? I think part of that is just I think also I suspect this might be a case where like we had kind of let ourselves get hyped and when it didn't quite meet the hype, maybe due to previous expectations, like there's like we're not meeting it on its own terms, or at least I feel like maybe I'm not in some ways. So yeah, but I feel very much the same. I'm not in a hurry to go out and see it again right now, but maybe on a cold, windy night, I'll pop it in and see how it goes on a second viewing.
also, we should mention that like the character acting in this is absolutely fucking stunning. Lupita Nyong'o is just stellar the entire way through.
Oh yeah, no, the actors are great. I love the dad. The dad's funny. And I really like there's a real subtle moment because most of the time the dad acts like a goofy like schlub. He dabs at one point and the kids cringe. Like, and this is like to establish his character. And that's all great, but I really like it's such like a subtle character moment. But like he kind of code switches his dialect when like the attackers first show up to like try and sound more threatening and like build himself up. It added an interesting little layer to his character to what could have just been like he's just like a bumbling goofy dad, and Lupita Nyong'o is like the real star of the show, which is kind of true, but I feel like the performances are good, the characters are fun, they're likable. I think my one complaint is that when because me and Haley both commented on this, was that when Lupita Nyong'o does an excellent job, and I think that she handles like having to talk in the raspy like shadow voice really well for the most part, but there definitely are moments where like it's hard to maintain that and still be creepy. Haley was a haunted house actor, so she knows better than anyone how hard it could be to like stay scary. But occasionally when the alternate self was talking, like it went into like return the slab or suffer my curse territory. But again, that's she did a marvelous job on the whole, despite my like slight criticisms.
Just before we dive into spoilers and all that good stuff, I do just want to mention I didn't realize that she plays Maz from fucking the new Star Wars trilogy.
Oh, you didn't?
No, that's a wild discovery.
Was she in Black Panther?
Yeah, she was Nakia.
Okay, all right, great. Because for some reason I'm like, oh yeah, she was Maz. She was in Black Panther, but then like, wait a minute, was she in Black Panther? Am I a racist? Like, did I just out myself by mistaking her for someone else? Okay, great. Yeah, because
no, that's what I knew her from. But like, apparently, I also knew her as Maz, who is just a character I have not thought about. So
no, I hadn't thought about. In fact, because I know that what movie was she in that was more of like an art movie? I never saw it, but she was getting a lot of buzz. I think it was for Beasts of the Southern Wild. Was that the movie she starred in when she was younger?
She was in 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah, like I had heard some buzz around her, so I thought I remember seeing that she was Maz and thinking that was a strange career move for her, if not a sensible one. But yeah, and then for some reason, like I was trying to think about it, and I'm like, oh, of course she wasn't Black Panther. She was like the warrior spear lady. Wait a minute, no, she's not. Not at all. She doesn't look like her at all. But yeah, she was just the Marvel love interest. So that's why she was in that movie, but I was struggling to remember.
So yeah, let's I guess before we dive into spoilers, I want to stress that like we still really like this movie, as critical as we've been of it. So like you should go see it if it's your type of thing. It's not as good as Get Out, but it's still pretty damn good, especially if you're looking for a horror movie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's worth it to support original filmmaking and like auteurs and creativity on its own. Don't go in expecting Get Out though.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's absolutely good, but it's not the next Get Out. That said, next week we're gonna be switching gears once again and pretty hard. We're gonna talk about Mob Psycho 102, which is wrapping up next week. So we're pretty excited about that. Mob Psycho 102 has been like one of the greatest seasons of anime I've ever watched. It is absolutely incredible, and I'm very excited to see how it ends. So we're gonna be talking about that next week.
Be there or be square. Dab.
You're, I'm. Oh my god. All right, let's talk spoilers about fucking Us. And I don't know that we're gonna have that much to say, just because we've said pretty much all we want to talk about in the pre-spoiler discussion. We're not, as we've said, we're not super wowed by this movie, but like I think we want to talk about some stuff. Like I want to talk about like kind of where I felt the themes went.
Yeah, let's do that. Because I mean, again, the movie's not totally brainless. It clearly has ideas, just not always expressed in the most straightforward or intuitive way, perhaps. But occasionally, weirdly enough, like paradoxically super straightforward. Like there are times where the characters. I think that's the other thing about Lupita Nyong'o's acting as like the shadow self, is that in those moments, not only was she doing like a mummy voice, but she had to basically like turn directly to the camera and like state her motivations, which is always a hard sell for an actor.
Right. This movie has really 3 set pieces. It has the vacation home in the beginning, it has Tim Heidecker's home in the middle, and then it has the underground lab, the Merlin's Forest hellscape thing at the end.
Side note, I really laughed my ass off when it was switched to Merlin's Forest from like the racist Native American Vision Quest thing it was in the 80s.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether I actually that actually happened or not, or whether it was something in my head.
No, you didn't imagine it. That happened, and it was incredibly funny.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I was gonna say if that's a really good gag if they changed it. Otherwise, I was worried that I was losing my mind. But no. So like in the beginning, when the family just shows up to talk to the other family, like the shadow selves, the Tethered and whatnot, which the Tethered is a fucking incredible name. I have to hand it to him. It's so good. I love the
yeah
name.
that's pretty fucking sick.
But when they first show up, it feels like it's trying to create this thematic identity of like the duality of the African American trying to fit in both with the white culture as well as the black culture. And like I'm so white. Please, I'm sorry, but like that. Like I've read enough about this stuff that like I don't know it. I don't understand it. It's not my what I've had to live with. But it's the type of thing that like I could see the movie kind of going for with it, like trying to create this idea, this thematic resonance of the duality of their personalities and whatnot. Which I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Let's see what they go with. Let's see what they do with it. And then they leave and they go hang out with the Heideckers. And I'm like, all right, so they're here now. And then the Heideckers have clones. And I'm like, all right, so it's clearly not that. Because as a white dude, I don't feel that sort of racial pressure. So I'm like, all right, you've kind of lost me here, movie. What are you going for? Like, what's your whole thematic pull? What are you trying to say here? And then it changes once again, and like Lupita Nyong'o's Adelaide goes down this escalator, and I'm like, okay, so is this like a hell thing? Like, are these supposed to be demons or some shit? And it just ends up being like their mind control things from the government, which it raises like a pretty tropey question of like, what one's the one that's controlling the other? Who's what one leads the other? And I was super unimpressed by the ending. We'll get back to that one.
I was gonna say the answer. I mean, think of the like most obvious twists that you can imagine when there are two like identities, and you've solved the ending.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because there's a little bit more that I want to talk about with the ending. But like that,
Sure.
That's my big problem. I feel like with the themes of this movie is that each act feels like it has its own set of themes, but never really come together to say anything truly meaningful in my eyes.
All right, so here's what I've got. Here's what I've got for you that makes a little more sense now that I think about the movie as a whole, but I'm still not terribly impressed by it. So I too had a similar reaction. I'm like, okay, so you have like the alternate shadow selves. I'm like, my first thought was like Persona 4.
Yeah, no, I was gonna make the joke too. Don't worry.
Like both jokingly and like unjokingly, is that the thing about Persona 4, that game, is that all the bosses are like the main characters' like repressed desires, and they too kind of state their motivations directly to the camera. And so I thought like something like that was kind of gonna happen, and like sort of you could make that argument, but not really. And so, but I too had a similar moment where I'm like, all right, like, you know, Get Out was very much concerned with issues of race. Like, I can easily see how this might tie into it. Like, let's see where this goes. And then I too was thrown for a bit of a loop when the Heidekers had the clones and everyone had the clones, and it started to feel more like a zombie movie or like a pod people invasion of the body snatchers thing. But the thing about zombie movie invasion of the body snatchers thing is that those were like metaphors for communism. And so I'm like, whoa, wait. All these murderers, like, dressed in red, like, you know, rising up all at the same time, like, linking hands in unity. Of like, surely this isn't like a Red Scare movie, is it? Like, surely not. And it's not.
Okay. Interesting.
So, and I don't think so, although I think you can make the argument that it is about class in one way or another, because that is a big focus in the beginning of, like,
I mean, it's even beyond just like a focus in the beginning. It is basically like the visuals throughout, like, you know, the people living underground and in the sewers and whatnot. Like, the class metaphor is there. It just, what it says is the question.
Yeah, and so I think what it says, and like if we're gonna talk about the twist, which, surprise, Adelaide was the shadow all along. I think if I had to come up with something coherent, it's this, because the clones, the reds, the commies, the pinkos, if you want to look at it that way, they're given a decent amount of like humanity and sympathy. Like, even Shadow Nyong'o says, like, you know, we're humans too. Like, I was special. Like, I escaped and I like went to the surface. And like otherwise we live kind of these meaningless drudgery lives on the like kind of on the backs of you who get to revel in the spotlight of the above world, like taste the sun and stuff. And then so, you know, they escape, they link arms to like make a statement and like kill everyone, but then the shadow turns out to be, you know, the person who we thought was the real one the whole time, if you don't have a shred of like reading comprehension or literacy in these kind of stories at all. So I think the thing is that, like, if we are talking about like a class metaphor, you know, pointedly, like, these are very like upper class kind of families. You know, they have a vacation home, they're out on the beach. Like the Heidecker twins are really bratty and snotty, and like the dad complains about how Tim Heidecker was like swinging his dick around about like all this great new stuff that he has, and kind of like shallow materialism. And so then what if we are to, you know, go with the red suits as the tethered as like the working class, the proletariat, and then basically what we end up having is Shadow Nyong'o. She has ascended, like risen in social status and become part of the upper classes, and now wants to preserve that position of not being on the bottom and is not participating in the revolution. And that's why, like, maintaining her position in kind of this, middle class, upper middle class family is important as they sort of get away from the, like, linking of arms and this show of power. So, like, yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonable reading. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I think so. Here's kind of where I'm at with it. It's absolutely a reasonable read, but I just from what I know of Jordan Peele, I kind of have a hard time accepting the idea that, like, the whole ending of the movie is, the Reds take over and, like, link arms across America and everything is in hell and bad. Like, is that, like, just saying, hey, the lower class shouldn't rise up, it's gonna be a disaster type of thing?
Well,
because, like, that's a wild statement to me.
And I was thinking that too, and that is pretty weird. I think that I think that you can take it one of two ways. And, like, it depends, I guess, on how much you, like, invest in the humanity and sort of become sympathetic to their plight after the scene in the subway train where Lupita Nyong'o goes Ultra Instinct on herself. A side note, I'm diseased beyond repair because literally when she started doing the dancing, and it was a great fight, it was a great scene, but literally the first thing my brain said was, "Is this the power of Ultra Instinct?" Someone help me.
We need to get you to a detox center, my friend.
I've injected too much anime straight into my veins. But yeah, no. So that's why earlier in the movie I'm like, oh no, like, is this like a Red Scare movie? Like, oh Jesus. Which, for the fact that, like, clearly there's some, like, the movie's been compared to The Twilight Zone, both of them. That's in line with that, I suppose. But I don't think if this is the reading that we're taking, and granting it's a somewhat flimsy one, I don't think there's enough there for me to confidently say this is, his bold commentary on class politics. I think at best it might just be like an undercurrent. But I think that if we are to read it as such, the idea is less that, this is a disaster and more that this is retribution, perhaps? I don't know. But also, I don't know if the movie thought about it that much and they just wanted to make a movie about creepy tethered red suit people and have a Twilight Zone twist ending. So,
yeah, like, it's all kind of weird. Because, like, I think even beyond, like, the disaster ending, like, creating this idea of, like, fear of, the communists and, like, by extension socialists, which, if you're, attuned to the political climate right now, there's definitely a rise of socialism as capitalism is being viewed as, this evil, terrible thing. It is. Like, so it's kind of weird to have this narrative, or, like, at least in your reading, where, like, the bad guys are literally, this rising political movement. Like, if you take the reading that you are going with, this comes out as very pro-capitalist, which is it's strange. Like, that's all it really boils down to.
Strange, but not necessarily impossible. I mean, like, if we're talking about other sort of politically minded movies, like, in our conversation about Black Klansman the other day, how a big part of that movie is, like, being part of the system. I think that, like, in this case, you can see something similar, because I think that would end up being the point of the mom character then, is that, like, she is, like, by all rights should be, like, part of this revolution and like having lived in the horrible conditions of the underground, but just wants to, hold on to what she's got. Like, she's got her family and, all that shit and a new life, and doesn't want to jeopardize that now that she's moved up. And so I think that
but she's never played as sympathetic.
No.
And like I think that's kind of like the big understatement, or like the big thing that kind of pokes the hole in your otherwise fairly comprehensive thesis. Like, there's no sympathy for the Reds.
I mean, I think there's a little bit.
But I mean, not like sympathy in the way that it would need to be.
No, and I think that's why I question that's why I question the validity of this reading in general, is that they are very much still presented. I mean, we compared the movie, at least in our pre-discussion. I can't remember if we mentioned it in the recording right now, but we compared it to a zombie movie, for God's sakes, like the unwashed masses, like killing everybody. And that's certainly the dominant tone, despite the, moments of sympathy we get for the tethered, and like maybe this nicer show, like this nice thoughts of like solidarity. So that's I mean, I agree. Am I basically blowing hot air out of my ass? Pretty much. But
we don't have anything else to really talk about with this episode, so if we spend 10 minutes blowing hot air out of Jackson's ass, that's what we're doing.
Hell yeah.
I do want to actually talk about like just analysis in general, though, and just say like I think that this is one of those movies where you can just ignore analysis, like not to completely undo what we just talked about, specifically what Jackson just talked about. So I'm sorry, Jackson.
It's undo it, fam. Unravel that shit. Tug on that string.
But like, who fucking cares? Like, this movie, like, I feel like it wasn't thematically cohesive enough to actually be able to say, this is what it was about. This is what we should talk about with this movie. So like, fuck it. Just enjoy it as a movie.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right, and I think it is still very much worth enjoying as a movie. Although I will say, by contrast, I think that's what makes this one have less staying power than Get Out had.
Absolutely.
Whereas,
no, like I'm on record. As a matter of fact, I just had an article for 25 Years Later go out that opened up with like the best science fiction has things to say. And like, it's the exact same thing. If you're gonna do horror, if you're gonna do science fiction, almost any good narrative has like some thematic punchiness to it that makes it resonate with its audience. So like, Get Out is absolutely going to hold a higher weight than Us, just for that, at least in my eyes. It's not a bad movie. It just isn't Get Out.
You know what? That's a pretty high bar, though. I can think of a lot of movies that aren't Get Out. It's most of them.
I do just, as I said, I want to talk about the ending. Mostly not from a thematic standpoint, but from a storytelling standpoint, because I kind of hated it.
I couldn't believe they went for it, honestly. I'm like, no way they're just gonna play this completely straight. Like, no way. That's some fucking like 50 schlock.
So like, there's multiple levels to it. Like, I admittedly didn't see the twist coming that, Red and Adelaide were switched. Like, that just wasn't something that occurred to me, just because like, A, I wasn't really thinking that hard about it. I was more caught up trying to pick up themes and whatnot. But B, I also was just like, that's, tropey, but once again, if you can do something with it, like, let's see what you got to offer. So like, I wasn't even necessarily that upset that they did the switch. I'm like, all right, it is what it is, But like, it's the final fucking pan shot when it pulls away and like everything's on fire and there's explosions and police helicopters, where I'm just like, God, you couldn't have gone with something less tropey for an ending. Like, it felt very much like just kind of a boring ending. Like, it didn't have... Get Out's ending was like such a cathartic relief, because like there's so much, racial tension built up in the moment of the cop car coming towards him. And then when it's his fucking TSA buddy and they ride off into the sunset together, it was such a good resolution. And with this one, it just pans up and it's like, hey, everything's in chaos. I'm like, cool. this is just like any other disaster movie. Like, this is just fucking 2012. Who gives a fucking shit?
Geostorm, baby.
Countdown to Geostorm.
Yeah, no, that last shot, again, like for me, it's not that I spent the whole movie thinking, oh, you know, she's gonna be the Shadow all along. Like, the thought had crossed my mind, but like when like they started like looking at each other, I'm like, oh no, like, oh no, like they're doing it, they're actually doing it, but why? Oh no! And then they pulled off into the grand chain link arms with the chaos of the outside world. It's schlock.
I did like them looking at each other, though. I felt like that was pretty wonderfully acted, and I like the kid pulling down the mask and everything. I thought that was it was powerful in like how it was carried out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely like that moment. It could have been, it could have been a lot worse. But it definitely, like, this is the sort of thing that, like, again, Twilight Zone comparisons are made a lot, but that is like just straight up a Twilight Zone ending, just done with a little bit more tact and then less tact when it zooms out.
Yeah, it's just pure disaster movie malarkey. You know, like an 80-year-old would say.
Bringing out malarkey. Hell yeah.
Oh, look, we're really tired this week. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. I was hoping this would be like one like revolutionary episode where like, yes, let's talk about things again, like themes and ideas. Yes. And it's not that. And I'm sorry.
But what about communism, Sean?
The Cromulists. All right. Do you have anything else you really want to talk about with us?
I think we're done here. Go see it. It's worth supporting original films. It's fun. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Go support it just to get Peele another fucking movie. Like I want another Peele movie. I'm sure the next one's gonna be great. So, yeah, I don't know. I've been Sean McKinda. You find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. You can find my website, iSortive.com. I haven't really been updating that because I've been doing a lot of writing for 25 Years Later site.com. We'll talk about them again in a minute. But I just did a review for Love, Death, and Robots, in which I did literally start the review by saying that the best science fiction has something to say. So if you just want more of me ranting about thematically bereft material, like, that's a great place to go find it.
Ouch.
No, I should say, like, I just, to clarify, I don't hate Love, Death, and Robots. It felt very much in the same vein as kind of us in a lot of ways. Like, it's an anthology of 18 separate episodes. I have a list of actually what episodes you should watch on that as well. So if you're like, hey, I don't want to watch all of these, what one should I watch? And there's like 4 that I'm like, you should absolutely watch these. But then the rest are, take them or leave them. And then, oh my god, I do have to say, at one point, one of the characters in Shapeshifters, which is one of the worst 2, straight up looks at one of the other characters and goes, "What do you mean the Taliban has werewolves?" And I'm like, you can't just say that. You can't just say that the Taliban has werewolves and pretend like that's not a ridiculously stupid thing to say. So yeah. That's where I'm at with my life.
And what a life it is. I've been Jackson Keller. You can find me nowhere. I'm on Sean's stream sometimes. I'm on my friend Connor's stream sometimes at Genghis Khan. We play Smash Bros. That's where I am. That's the internet. I've toyed around. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. I've toyed around with remaking my Twitter, but just like not following anyone, so I don't ever have to see anyone's like retweets and likes, but I still have a place where you can like get in touch with me. I don't know. I'll think about it. But I'm worried that I'll be tempted to like, because it's like even if I follow like my friends like you and Sam, I just know that Sam's gonna retweet some like alt-right fuckwit and like start shit, and I'm gonna get mad about it. It's gonna ruin my day. So
No, that's pretty fair. So if you do want to get in touch with Jackson, show up at my Twitch stream, show up at Connor's Twitch stream, or you can tweet at the podcast at BADH_cast. That just basically keeps track of what we got coming up, what we got going on, next week's episodes, etc., etc., etc. But you can also tweet at it, and I will pass on any information you want to tell Jackson like that.
To clarify, if my buddy Sam's listening, when I say retweeting alt-right fuckwits, I mean to fuck with them, not to imply that you are an alt-right fuckwit retweeting it because you agree. Realize that was a little ambiguous, so...
Important clarifications, yes. So yeah, if you want to talk to Jackson, that's a great way of doing so. It's also a great way, if you guys have an idea for what we should play next for our live streams. We're doing Danganronpa 2 in April, but after that, we were open to suggestions. So if you're like, hey, play this game, tweet at us. Like, I'm curious to see what you guys have to offer us. Other than that, though, as always, thanks Lords the Highway for using our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. Go check them out. They're on Spotify, all of the places you can get music. They're a great band. They've got some great stuff. Also, thanks to 25yearslatersite.com for hosting us. You guys are pretty great. I've got a little bit of writing going up there now, but it's a bunch of really cool people doing a bunch of really cool writing, a bunch of analysis, reviews, news, all that good stuff. And they actually just relaunched their site under a week ago as of when this podcast is going up. So, like, go hang out with that. There's, like, quizzes and stuff on there now, too. So it's a little bit more fun. It's not just education. It's now fun and forums and stuff like that.
Oh my god, there are quizzes. I'm going there right now. I didn't even know there were quizzes now.
Yeah, there's a great what they call the hardest Twin Peaks quiz out there. It's a bunch of like obscure Twin Peaks trivia, and I got like 8 out of 25 on it because I've watched the first season once, and most of the ones I got right were complete guesses.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, fucking go take that. It's a good time. As we said, next week we'll be talking about Mob Psycho 102. I'm very excited to talk about that. I already know that I have things I want to talk about, so it's gonna be less like waffling about nothing.
I mean, I'll make a bold claim. Mob Psycho 100 as a whole now, with the addition of season 2, I think it's safe to say that it is in my top 5 animus. I think that's a safe thing to say.
It's absolutely in my top 5 animus, and I've seen like 7, so
I've seen at least 30. So I sitting here flexing my not at all impressive weeb stats.
Your weeb stats that need to be fucking detoxed. So yeah, until next week. Bye.